introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce our moderator and speaker for today. First, our guest speaker will be Sir Aurithel Ghosh from Cisco System India. And then our moderator will be Dr. Nurul Huda Nik Zulkifli. She is a senior lecturer from Faculty of Computer and Mathematical Sciences, FSKM in UiTM Malacca. Thank you everyone for being here today. For your information, we also have participants from Universitas Tadulako, Indonesia. Anyone from the university? I would like to just say hi. Everyone? Okay. Before we continue, I would like to take this opportunity to have a group photo session first. So I would appreciate if all the participants to kindly turn on your camera for our photo session.
I have turned on my camera.
Okay. We are ready when you are ready, Dr. Shima. Dr. Shima.
Yeah. Okay. I need to prepare for the photo session first. Hold on, yeah.
Okay.
Hold on. Okay, are you ready? So I'd like to capture your photo for today. You can turn on your video camera. Right? Are you ready? I will count 1, 2, 3, yeah? Then I will capture the photo. 1, 2, 3. Right. Another one, hold on, yeah. One, two, three. Okay. We
Okay.
have a few
Thank you.
pictures here. If I think maybe we can take photo to next page. Maybe I cannot take all photo since we have so many participants here. So I cannot take all the other participant photo. It's just that photos who are in one on second page or third page perhaps. Right? Okay, hold on. I need to take another photo. One, two, three. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nashima. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin in the name of Allah, the most merciful and most gracious. We shall begin our webinar today with the recital of Kitab Al-Fatihah and Doa by Brother Muhammad Shanaha bin Muhammad Pirus. I hand it over to you, Muhammad Shanaha.
Thank you, Mr. Faiz. Ladies and gentlemen, I will try to Kitab Al-Fatihah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Oh Allah, thanks belong to you. You deserve all thanks. Thanks be to you for your continuous favors. Ya Allah, Ya Alim, Ya Hakim. Please bring us out of the darkness of doubt and favor us with the light of comprehension. O Allah, open to us the doors of your mercy and unfold for us the treasure of your knowledge. By your mercy, O Allah, the most merciful of the merciful ones. O Allah, make useful for us what you have taught us and teach us knowledge and will be useful to us. O Allah, make our tongue full of your remembrance and our heart with your admiration of you. O Allah, you do whatever you wish and you are our availer and protector and best of it. Ya Allah, Ya Fattah, Ya Halim, let our heart be filled with light and insight and understanding and knowledge. Verily, you control everything. We ask you for beneficial knowledge and good deeds, and a strong memory, and a perfect understanding, and a sound intellect by your mercy, O the most merciful of the merciful ones. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Back to you, Mr. Faiz.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbil Alamin. Thank you, Muhammad Shanaha. Okay, before we proceed, just a little housekeeping before we get started. Okay, keep the microphone off and you are welcome to turn on your video during the session. Also, kindly fill up the attendance and feedback forms that will be made available during the Q&A session in the chat box. Okay, now let's begin with today's webinar. I would like to pass the session to our moderator to lead the program session, Dr. Nurul Huda.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Doctor.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, okay. Hello, very good morning to everyone. Thank you, Mr. MC. So I'm going to be your MC today. My name is Nurul Huda Zulkifli from UiTM Malacca. So I'll be responsible for moderating this webinar today. So I'm glad I welcome to our Mr. Speaker, Sir Arirul Ghosh from
Hi.
Cisco India.
Hi, good
Hi,
morning to
sir.
everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
How are
Yeah,
you today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Fine. So Mr. Arirul will share his expertise with us in industrial and technology in the moment. So
Right.
if you have any question for the speaker, you may raise up your hand and turn on your microphone, and you can ask the question straight away, or you can write your questions in the chat box, and I will read your question on your behalf. And then if you're not asking question, please, I hope you can keep yourself muted along the session, yeah? Right now, here's our special speaker. Mr. Ariro is currently working as a senior network consulting engineer at the Cisco System India. He has 15 years experience in designing, deploying, migrating, and supporting critical multi-site redundant enterprise and service provider network infrastructure. Well, I would like to say that his career achievement was very excellent. He won the Customer Assurance Program Awards in 6 years in a row in the various network projects in Europe and also Asia Pacific. Wow, it's very good. It's very outstanding, I think. So we are glad you are here. So you
Thank you
can
so much.
share your thoughts and insight on what's new
Yeah.
in the industrial cybersecurity and technology.
Yeah, sure.
Is it okay? You can start
Yeah.
now. You may start, Mr. Arirul. So the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much for the nice introduction. Yeah, let's just kickstart now. And I'll just start sharing my screen. You let me know once you guys can see my screen. You are not able to see my screen, right?
Yes.
Yes. You cannot see your screen.
Okay, now can you see my screen?
Progressing.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Yes,
Okay.
already.
Okay, fine.
See then.
So cool. So just to do a level setting, right? And thank you, hello everybody, and thank you, and welcome for today's session. So today, what we are going to talk about is critical infrastructure security and securing industrial automation and control systems. In particular, what we look into this is the end-to-end perspective. So now you might ask, what is industrial, security, critical infrastructure? These are infrastructures which are, sitting in plants, in industrial plants, manufacturing, oil and gas. So these are very critical. Sorry, somebody is requesting to annotate. Okay. Anyways, so these are very critical infrastructure. If something breaks, you've heard of critical infrastructure in in Japan. What happened, right? There was some issue and there was a nuclear power plant blowout. So that is why we call it critical. And how do we secure this critical infrastructure is what we are going to look into today, right? So we also would be talking about Cisco's acquisition in the field of industrial cybersecurity. Okay, we call it Cisco Cyber Vision, which actually gives us a full visibility into the industrial control system domain with asset inventory and real-time monitoring of the control system. It checks what are the process data, provides kind of a comprehensive threat intelligence for these industrial, networking part, right? So that's that. So just a quick introduction. So this is a quick intro. Already an intro has been done. So like 14, 15 years of experience now working with Cisco for the past 10 years in various capacities. Currently, I'm working on industrial cybersecurity projects. I'm working with TNB Malaysia for digitizing their, and we'll talk about that as well. But we have been working with digitizing their infrastructure, where we are connecting their substations into a ring, so that people don't have to go to the substations to take data. It's just automated, right? And you can control what's happening on the substation through something in the data center, which is called a SCADA master. So everything that happens on the substation, you just control it through your management station, which is the SCADA master, right? Yeah, so that's about me. And here, talking about today's agenda, okay? By the way, if you raise your hand, I will not be able to know. So just, unmute yourself and ask questions. Otherwise, I'll just carry on. Okay. So yeah, so just talking about today's agenda and what we are going to discuss today. So just a quick introduction of what cybersecurity is, and then talk about the risk and opportunities.
Excuse me, please mute your microphone, or maybe admin can mute the participant. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, please. I don't mind. Yeah, if you're asking me. Right. Cool. So we'll start again. So just we'll talk about a quick introduction and then talk about risk and opportunities that we see in this space. In terms of Cisco, what are we doing as a part of holistic security, which is again the end-to-end security, right? And then we are going to talk about network platforms that we use to solve these security issues, and then discuss some real-life challenges that the industrial IoT customer face, right? Then what we are going to touch upon would be, defining what is operational technology, what is OT, right? We all know what IT is, what is OT, and what is meant by industrial control systems, okay? And then we will look into the components which form the OT environment. So what are components that would be required to form an OT environment? That we are going to talk about. We will see what is the different OT assets, right? OT, again, just to touch base, OT is nothing but anything that runs in the plant network, like SCADA, like HMI, like PLC. You guys might have heard of this. So these are part of an OT environment that is called operational technology. And we all know IT. So IT and OT is what runs in the plant is what we call as OT, and what runs in your enterprise network, in your colleges, in offices is called IT, right? So then we'll discuss how OT is different from IT, because we've, a lot of times we are hearing IoT and IT and OT are converging into one area. So that is what IoT is, especially industrial IoT, right? Then we move to discussing the general challenges faced in OT that is not seen with IT. Then we discuss two well-known attacks that have happened, okay, in the recent past. You might have heard of Stuxnet and Black Energy in Ukraine that happened, right? After setting that context, right, we move to discussing our product, our flagship product that Cisco has, which is called Cisco Cybersecurity Architecture, which helps industrial customers gain visibility in the industrial control system. Then we finish off by discussing how cyber vision helps in providing the operational insights and threat detection. Okay. So so the expectation is that you should all have, basic IT knowledge, IT security knowledge. If you do not have that, maybe you will not be able to understand a lot of things. And if it would be better if you have, aware of what industrial control system does, because we are not going to touch base on that. We will talk about more into security rather than touching base into the industrial control systems and what they do, right? Though we will touch upon that, we already discussed it in the brief, but we will not go in depth, right? So what would be your takeaway from this session? Okay, what will you gain from the session? So what you are going to gain would be the challenges that we are facing with security in the industrial environment, okay, and how at a high level we can solve the problems. These are the two takeaways that you can get, and that will actually help you if you are looking in working in this field and in this area after college. Then this might give you, a bit of a push towards security and cyber security, because most of the studies that people do is IT security. There's a lot of demand with industrial security, which there are less number of people, and I hope if once you have this after you go through this session, maybe that will inspire you to study and learn more about what OT security and industrial security is, right? Any questions?
So far, no.
So far, I don't have any question. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So let's just don't forget to interrupt me whenever you have a question. Just interrupt me. Okay, cool. So let's start. This is the introduction section. Okay, so let's dive right in, right? So we have all seen news, right? We have all heard about incidents that have some serious stuff that has gone on. A lot of these industrial customers, and these things have happened in industrial customers, right? If you see the names. Okay, so a lot of these industrial customers might have faced where they have stayed up, all night because of some incident which had happened. And there was significant amount of damage caused by these incidents. There have been $2 billion plus in losses because of these incidents that have taken place. A recent research just linked that below 2018 research came out, with the fact that around 68% of the IT security people found that securing industrial control system is like one of the most harder things to do. Okay, so that's what I said. So if you are an expert with IT security, that doesn't mean anything there to do with OT security or industrial security. They are completely different. But yeah, your IT security knowledge might help, but then you need to have that built up that expertise on industrial security. Okay. So the IT security people are saying one of the biggest challenges are securing the OT environment. Okay, and then this last stat that's there that came out a couple of years back, and it came out of Ford, and I found it very interesting. There was a survey that was done with six CISOs, that is Chief Information Security Officers, and they are actually now resorting to medication or alcohol just to deal with the stress level of keeping everything secure, right? You can understand how much stressed these top bosses are because of security, right? And when the staff is keeping people up all night, and at Cisco we take these things very seriously, because a lot of these customers end up buying Cisco products, and they are looking at Cisco because we are kind of a market leader. So they are looking at Cisco to solve some of their security challenges. And that's where the trust with Cisco and with customers, partners are involved, right? So yeah, so we'll move on to the next. So, so in this diagram, right, what we are typically showing here is a typical IoT stack, okay? And talking about, as we are seeing, right, we are talking about connectivity from sensor all the way up to the cloud now, right? Or say, for example, or an on-prem platform where you should be running analytics. Because ultimately what you need, what you do is with all these data, you would take this data and run analytics tool or analytics code on it to get some meaningful value out of the data, right? So where Cisco it shows like how and where Cisco plays a role when we talk about IoT. So if you check see the dotted lines here, right, this is where the Cisco is playing a part, right? So we have what you call portfolios or product portfolios where we and services, by the way, where we are catering to all these things, right? For example, from industrial security to sensor networking, industrial Wi-Fi, industrial routing, switching, IoT gateways. We have edge computing as well as IoT security, right? And how it started, how this journey of Cisco started was, hello? Any questions? Okay, then I'll carry on.
Questions so far? Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So it started, so I'll just give you when it started, right? It started pretty early. It started with switching with then the gateways with Cisco when we went into that industrial space. The industrial space was typically occupied by people like Siemens or Rockwell. But when we started, we went with our switching port, and then we had our gateways, their wireless, and the rest of the portfolio slowly followed, right? And as Cisco, it gives us pretty good insight, as we are playing in this industrial space now for the past 10 years. I think I'm getting a lot of feedback of my own voice. Echo is happening. Hello? Okay. Anyways, so some of the challenges that our customers have been facing is they have moved beyond connectivity to try to actually secure the system, right? Guys, I'm getting a lot of feedback of my own voice. I can hear my own voice actually. I think we might need to put everybody on mute if people are not on mute. Hello? Hello? No, now it looks to be better. Okay, so what I was trying to come to is that we as Cisco, we have a lot of insight of what's happening because we are playing in this area, and a lot of customers are using Cisco products in their industrial environments. So we are quite aware of what has been happening with the security issues that's plaguing these big industrial customers, and that's where we can help actually, right? So moving to the next slide is, this slide at a very broad level. If you look at what these environments look, what I mean to, if you try to classify them on the left-hand side, what you're seeing here is an example of a manufacturing environment, right? Manufacturing could be anything, car manufacturing, Coca-Cola manufacturing plant, or an aluminium manufacturing plant. Let's take that as an example, where you're trying to digitize your legacy, because what is running today is mostly legacy infrastructure. And on the right hand side, we are talking about digitizing some net new services. And a good example of this would be in the utility space, where we are working with TNB Malaysia, and we are working on distribution automation. So what we are trying to do is we are connecting all their substations, all their RTU sensors in these substations, and bringing those data up to the data center, okay, where they are analyzing, they are doing analytics on that data, right? So ultimately what's happening is these RTUs, mostly they are legacy. So we at Cisco, we are translating those legacy network, like converting the protocols from legacy protocols to an IP-based protocol and moving those data up to the data center, right? So that you can control stuff. You don't need to go to substation, do anything. You can just sit on on your data center on a SCADA master and just put in some commands, and poof, things start working, right? So that till that level of digitization has already happened, right? And also on the, if you talk about the utility space on the right hand side, we have something called the automated metering infrastructure. So I'm working with PES Thailand as well, where we are connecting all their smart meters at home and in offices, and bringing those data into the data center, so that you don't have to send your technician to read the meter reading now. Okay, everything is automated. Everything is through a centralized management system on your data center. If somebody doesn't pay your electricity bill, you don't send your person to the to the person's house and then disconnect the electricity, right? You can just do it from that data center itself, or your management center itself, right? So that is the level of flexibility and digitization that has always happened with Cisco, right? And ultimately, why we bring these points up, if you open up, start connecting these things, sometimes legacy, sometimes they are modern networks, modern equipments. Whenever you start connecting things, you are always getting open for security threats, right? So these are the challenges, right? Moving to the next one, if you look at the challenges that we are seeing in the network, I'm giving you 3 examples here of manufacturing, then the oil and gas, and utility environment. Okay, so if you try to look into deeper into what these environments look like, you typically have the control system lies. You have 3 layers actually, and a 3-layer a control system, and hopefully a DMZ isolating the rest of the internet. In certain cases, we find that the DMZ doesn't have a big flat network that's connecting back to the enterprise. So what is a DMZ, by the way? So let's look at this layer first. So process layer is nothing but, in your industry, say for example, you've seen that robot hands working when you're seeing a car manufacturing unit, right? So those robot hands are nothing but a process motor or a robot or IO. That is your process layer. Then that robot is controlled by something that is sitting on an above layer, okay, which could be a workstation, an industrial PC, okay, that is controlling all these robot hands which are doing all the work. And then you have something called the DMZ or IDMZ. So I told you you would require some amount of IT security knowledge. So this DMZ is nothing but a demilitarized zone. So so what we do is we put a firewall between your enterprise network and your OT environment, okay? And this firewall is actually segregating both the networks. So anything that wrong happens in your IT, because IT is open to internet. Everybody's connecting, everybody's bringing their own devices, connecting. Hackers might come in, you might not know. So you have to have a protection layer, right? Because if somebody hacks into your process network, you know what happens, right? Somebody can come in and just stop that robot hand and and once that robot hand stops working, huge millions and millions of dollars of loss might happen, because I'll tell you what happens with industrial networking. There is a safety system as well. So what happens is, if something breaks, right, the safety instrumented system or the safety system keeps in, because that robot hand or anything for that matter can cause, because they are huge equipments, they can cause human life danger as well. So you have to have a safety backup safety system. Once the safety system kicks in, your entire plant is switched off or cannot work, okay, until and unless the safety systems are cleared, right? So huge amount of loss might happen. So that's why you need to secure the network. You need to have a DMZ, a demilitarized zone, segregating these. Okay, so that's one of the things. So there are, cases where, you look into the, segmenting the network, protecting vulnerable Windows workstation that might be there. Okay, so then there could be, threat detection as well. There could be remote access. So what use cases we ideally would look for is these, right? There has to be visibility, there has to be segmentation, there has to be, vulnerability scan happening in the network. There has to be proper remote access. So what happens, I'll tell you, with remote access. It's a very interesting case where, a plant network doesn't use only one type of equipment. Say, for example, like IT, right? Everybody's using Cisco equipment, say switch, router, for everything for connectivity. For plant, that's not the case. For plant, they could use Rockwell, Yokogawa, Hitachi, Siemens, okay, then Schneider. So it's a mixed environment. And a lot of times what happens is, you have these vendors, they want to log into your system and check, hey, what's wrong, why something is not working, or why something is failing, right? So they will log in from a remote station, maybe in their office, to your environment. So how do they log in? How can we secure that? That is something also, one of the use cases that we at Cisco look very seriously into, right? So moving to the next slide, this section actually talks about the critical infrastructure, risk and opportunities that we have and see, right? So security remains one of the biggest challenges in industrial IoT, okay? And this is something that's widely being recognized today. And, we are going to cover how Cisco is going to help customers address these challenges, okay? That's very important. Let's move. Yeah. So it's important to note that particularly in OT network, right? What happens is, cyber attacks are increasing. Okay, so with 2018-2019 benchmarking that was done with CISOs and CIOs interviewed, it was expected that attacks in this OT space, okay, the industrial space, has increased. It is something that we are definitely, seeing happen more and more, and it has become, very common. A lot of these customers do not know they have been attacked till they have some amount of loss or some amount of data breach. A lot of times the attackers just go in and sit in and just get all the information out, right? Okay, next is looking at this, right? So this securing these industrial network is challenging for these main reasons. And here's the slide, right, for that. Firstly, as I spoke to you guys earlier, there is a skills shortage. This is not unique, particularly in the security world. Good security people is difficult to get. However, cyber security people with OT experience, okay, is extremely rare. So what is that? Security person with OT experience. So you will have to have security knowledge that you can get from IT, but you have to know the OT network as well. So that rare combination is very hard to achieve. Okay. And also we are dealing with growing number of threats. Okay. So, not only are we getting attacked, more attacks, right? But the threats are also becoming more and more sophisticated as time goes on. And accordingly, we are dealing with many more compliance and regulatory constraints in this space. Okay, so we have to deal and comply with all the really there is a lot of awareness about cybersecurity risk and threats with shareholders, boards, and etc. Right? So they are keen to understand what are the risks and how can we control those risks, and there are a lot of requirements for reporting, okay, and auditing that we have to deal with, right? And for example, I'll tell you, for Malaysia or Indonesia, there would be laws by the government, okay, which dictates how you have to run a plant. It doesn't. There can be process-related laws, there can be security-related laws, but there is a governance law. But the main laws that were developed in the US and in the Europe. Okay, for NOOR, okay, is one of them. Okay, for utility space. So a lot of these laws that, for example, Malaysia, Indonesia, and for example, India as well, we have developed these laws based out of these laws in the US and the Europe. They have modified it, and we have started using it, okay, for our own benefit. But there are, statutory laws by the government. And lastly, speaking about the agility part, right? And lastly, so business is looking to be agile, okay. So with the convergence of IT and OT, businesses are looking to capture the benefit of industrial digitization. Businesses actually need to move faster, right? It needs to become more efficient in order to remain competitive, and to capture, the new market, to do well and to achieve their business goals. So security is well positioned to help some of these challenges. And why agility? Because those days are gone when you are like static, or you manufacture every day 10,000 units. Those days are gone. Okay, you get data from the market which says, hey, today the demand has increased. Okay, because we are doing data science, we are doing machine learning, right? So you need to get that information into your industrial system that, okay, my demand has increased for my product, I need to up my production, or I want to lower my production. So those doesn't have to wait for long. With the advent of IoT and digitization, these things happen in minutes, not days or weeks, which used to happen earlier, right? So that's one of the benefits. So today, in some of the industrial plants, have siloed network where IT and OT are not connected, by the way. But with the push towards, Industry 4.0 and digitization, more efforts are, made to connect this IT and OT together. And there's a requirement of a strong effort towards cyber security, actually, to control all these risks in OT environment. Okay. So to break it down, why the risk is considerably more in this space, in the OT space. First and foremost, we are dealing with the obvious area impact. So we are dealing with potential of human harm, environmental damage, and so on. So as I told you, if there's a nuclear power plant crisis that happens, that can endanger human life, environment, and so on, right? And what might be less obvious is the challenge of scale as well, right? We are dealing with larger attack surface, which I already mentioned, but we are dealing with larger data volume, complexity of data. But not only is that a problem of just data in which the business is generating, but securing that data as well, right? So then we are dealing with new business challenges. We are dealing with much larger life cycle. Traditionally, we are used to, right, with IT, it's like 3 years to 5 years of a life cycle of a product. You get a new laptop every 3 to 5 years, right? But in OT environment, in many cases, these devices are there in that OT environment for more than 20 years. Okay, so the life cycle of the product is more in OT space. And in many cases, there is also organizational conflict between the IT and the OT, right? And with the convergence, we are dealing with businesses. They aren't necessarily supportive of these changes. So they might not necessarily produce patches. They not necessarily understand security. They are building products, and that are insecure. And in these kind of spaces, and of course, lastly, we are dealing with constraint which might be hardware limitation. Okay, not giving us security footprint. So we may, we may want, but there is also access issues. For example, we can't bring down machines to patch them because, as you understand, right, industrial systems, they run 24/7. Not like IT. Oh, okay, we take a downtime. It hardly happens with industrial space. It hardly happens maybe 6 months once. So you cannot like, oh, there is a security vulnerability. I want to patch that equipment. It doesn't happen that way, that you can take it down and patch it. Because when you take it down, your as I told you, safety instrument system kicks in, and once you take it down, it's not like you power it up and it becomes up. It doesn't happen that way. There's this life cycle. There is total time of half a day is gone to bring that down and make that up. Okay. I think there's some noise. Anyways, so we can't bring down. So as I said, we cannot bring down the machine, right? So we have to be very, careful about that. So there's an old saying in the security space that once a device that has been physically exposed, the security cannot be guaranteed. And really, it's about adding layers of defenses to be able to deal with it, right? So, and to be honest with IoT, we are exposing all these devices, right, into the field. For example, for the project that we are working with CNB, right, all these routers that are placed in substation, right? Okay, so we have to make sure that these routers which are in substation, they are actually exposed to anybody who wants to get their hands onto the router or any other equipment for that matter. How are we securing it, and why we have to secure it is very important. Why we know how we might touch base a little today on how are we doing it, right? So the next one would be, in many cases, okay, there's a lot of people in the industry that suggest, air gapping. What is air gapping? Okay, let's not connect. Let's keep the IT and the OT siloed. Let's not connect them between each other. Okay. And it's still a valid response, by the way, or a valid protection mechanism. But, going as far as 2011, okay, and you'll be amazed to hear what we found. We found 11 direct connections between air gap networks and enterprise networks. So typically speaking, air gap is only in theory. It doesn't work practically. Whenever you have to connect something, people will connect to get data out. Okay, and these connections, they do not realize they are insecure. They need to be secured, and that's where we play a role, right? Now, in fact, it's considered security through obscurity, right? It's a very old concept, by the way. The concept of security through obscurity is something that goes back as far as 1851, right? And it's been considered fairly poor security mechanism, okay? Or, it's certainly not a main method of providing security for a long, long time now, right? Because it used to be, okay, let's make it obscure, people will not know, and people have now sophisticated tools readily, freely available on internet, dark web. You get your hands on a Kali Linux box which has tools inbuilt, and you start doing these experiments. So you cannot secure your environment through obscurity. Those days are gone, right? Okay, so this is not to say that it's not to say that we should not be segmenting systems off. Okay, obscurity in the sense like air gapping, it's there, it's valid, but segmentation is needed. In fact, we should be advocating quite the opposite, by the way, for more segmentation, for many more sorts of barriers. However, I think it's important to understand that air gapping or just simply keeping the system separate not only does it give the business the advantage of connecting it and help decrease the the capabilities of being able to respond in terms of security incidents, or to be able to get secure data into the environment. So it it not only doesn't work, it actually conversely, to help essentially drive the business forward, right? So you need to connect whatever you need to connect, but you need to drive your business forward. For that, maybe doing proper segmenting, doing proper analysis, connecting where it's needed to be connected, but you know where the connection is, because you want to ultimately make it secure. If you don't know where the connection is and you're connected and you've forgotten, then ultimately it will remain insecure, right? So at Cisco, we like to think of security as an enabler, because if we look at what might hinder digitization, and if it concerns for security or cyber security, risk is something either halting or hindering innovation in organizations. So ultimately, this digitization innovation comes in, and if security doesn't provide or becomes an enabler for digitization, then through the lens of providing a platform and building security into what we are doing, security then becomes an enabler, because uh, a vehicle to assist the business with security should become a vehicle. Ultimately it should help business grow further. Okay, it should not hinder. Okay, I will become insecure, so I will not connect. That should not be the case. We should connect where we have to connect, and we have to know how to make it secure. That is the only way and the most positive way where we can drive digitization, because it's with in this century, right? We will move forward with digitization, and security will always be a challenge. So we have to work closely with security partners and vendors, and have ourselves security knowledge to secure those environments, right?
Sir,
So
uh,
yeah,
sir.
sorry.
So in your opinion, or maybe sorry to interrupt, it's just
No
like,
problem.
how do you foresee the readiness of industrial player about this? Are
Uh,
they going to ready
No, they are not ready. As I told you, the
already?
devices that are there, right? Uh, that these customers are running, they are 10, 15, 20 years old sometimes. And when they were manufactured, or at that point in time, these vendors, they never thought of security being such a big challenge. Okay. Uh, Now, there is a way to solve the problem, and we will touch upon that, right? So hold on to your thought, please, and we will look into it.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, we look at the holistic security part, right? So we might be familiar with this chart when it comes to enterprise IT, right? We want to try to secure our infrastructure. You want to start with being able to identify your assets, right? And then the communication pattern, how it works, and then you try to do some segmentation. So in case you have some vulnerability, it does not spread once you have segmentation in place. Okay, so that will confine the vulnerability part to that segmented network, and it will not spread, right? And you want to be able to run some threat detection, and in case there is a breach, you see it, and then finally, if you are brave enough in an industrial environment, to be able to actually do some enforcement as well, right? But almost nobody is in a place where they are doing automatic enforcement. Okay, but hopefully we want to be able to achieve this, going towards the right side of the chart, right, in the OT space. But this is what's happening today in the industrial space, right? When we look at our customers this is actually happening in the enterprise space. And when we look at the industrial environment, almost all of them, especially the big ones, are having trouble. Just big industrial customers are just having trouble getting off the first block. Okay, the starting block. Everybody is still in the discovery phase. They are struggling to do the segmentation portion. and this is pretty much what's been happening and what we have seen. So with big industrial players, they are still, in the discovery phase. But with IT, we have already come to the orange space where we are doing automatic enforcement. We see something, we have dynamic rules, and we are controlling everything automated way. Okay. So here we are still stuck in the green with the industrial space as of now, with most customers. Okay. So it's a problem of visibility, right? Because if you are still discovering, it's a problem of visibility. We are dealing with very, very diverse ecosystems, and then we have these major verticals. In each of these verticals, we are going to have assets that are very alien and foreign to a typical IT security platform, right? So diverse ecosystem, we already, discussed that. Different vendors, so not like a uniform, okay, enterprise, okay, I have only Cisco. That's not the case with OT. You have Siemens, Rockwell, Yokogawa, so diverse, ecosystems. And then, different verticals have different kind of devices. What is different verticals? Like automation industry, oil and gas, manufacturing, utilities, they are different verticals. These are verticals. And different verticals have different types of industrial equipment, okay? And which is very foreign to a typical, IT security platform or IT security personnel, right? So what's important here is profiling and detecting these assets is a challenge. And then beyond that, just implementing policy in these environments is also a challenge. But the point here is that we have two big issues. Almost all customers are struggling with basically trying to get a handle of what is with that they are trying to, secure, okay? Because most of the, everybody's trying to get an inventory of assets, and most of this inventory today is static in some file. You have just created an Excel file you've put in, right? That's where your inventory lies with industrial space. And they're trying to figure out, okay, how do we keep track of this inventory? And is this inventory updated, or when it was updated? There is still a struggling point, right? So once we get this visibility to the asset, okay, the next step is once we get this visibility to the asset, we want to go and move towards segmenting the network. We need to be able to understand where are the boundaries and where we should create this segment, right? So that we need to understand the communication pattern. And we also need to understand who's talking to whom, and pretty much that nobody has the correct view, because we need to understand not only segmenting is important, which device is talking to which device is also something that is very important. Okay, we will discuss more in detail about this, right? So they always end up breaking things when they are trying to do segmentation, because you don't have the visibility of what's talking to what, and you try to segment something, and then this device A was talking to device C, and you have segmented of device A from device C, and you start breaking things there. Okay, so that is a common experience that is seen with industrial space. Okay, and because you're not actually fully aware of what talks to what, right? So the point here is that we really cannot secure things in IoT if you can't see them, right? So you need visibility. It's like that's the starting point to solving all your problems. If you do not see, you cannot secure. If you see, then only you'll know, okay, I see this, I know I have to secure. That's why it's very important to have visibility. Okay, so the next slide we talk about, you really want to enforce or build a good secure practice in these environments. It really takes coordination between the two teams, that is IT and OT, right? Very often these two teams come together, there's a clash, like one person saying something, the other person doesn't understand, and there's an immediate pushback, right? So we are seeing less of it in now, and quite honestly, because the threats are so severe, the implications of not doing something is so severe that the top management is kind of forcing these two teams to come together. But you have, come together and work together to solve these problems and challenges, right? And the reason for this is that the IT understands how to configure security policies and platforms. And we know how to write policies, but what IT lacks is the context in OT environment, the context of keeping the OT platform or the industrial platform in mind and writing policy. On the other hand, these OT folks, will know the context and help IT. So what happens is when we do that handshaking with the IT OT, the OT people can give that proper context to these IT people and help them write correct policies. Okay. So that is where the OT and IT have to work hand in hand to secure, the industrial network in a proper way. Okay. So now let's look at why looking end to end and leveraging holistic security is very important. Okay. So a framework so the framework such as, NIST, cybersecurity framework have an end-to-end view, So they look at essentially the identification capability of onboarding systems. That, the type of stuff, being able to understand what is out there and how to protect it, right? And detecting what's going on. Okay, and in case of a cybersecurity incident, being able to respond to cybersecurity incidents and to recover in those particular cases. Okay, if the security incident happens, how do we recover it? That's also part of that end-to-end cybersecurity process, right? So now, as we look at the end-to-end security capability, it is possible to understand where we do have weaknesses, because identifying weakness is very important. And what makes it possible to mitigate some of the risk is by increasing strength in other areas. So, for example, if you don't have strong identity, okay, so many PLCs are program logic controller, which control all these sensors, right? So many PLCs wouldn't have, anything stronger than a MAC address to identify them, right? Understanding so I hope you guys understand what is a MAC address and IP address, by the way. I'll not explain that. Understanding that, impersonification of or other attacks may require better detection, increasing the ability to respond and recover in case of an attack, right? So in this particular area, we can help mitigate those weaknesses. So it is important concept to understand that if we look end to end, we can help increase our capability in other areas to help mitigate some of these weaknesses, right? So now, looking at the network platforms, in particular, how these network platforms helps us, right? So there are three areas I'm going to be talking to you about largely, right? Firstly is segmentation, which we have touched upon. So essentially, we are dealing, with a zero trust manner. We don't trust anything, okay? And how we deal with the devices across the network. Then secondly is looking into the visibility and analytics, okay? So with the objective of seeing absolutely everything, we need to see everything that's happening in the network. And that's going on, and then we have the response and recovery in stopping a breach. So if we find something, we need to stop and recover from that breach and make our, return our business to normal operations. So that is the whole idea, right, for these network platforms. So I'm going to, going through these three key security challenges. Okay, I think it can be stated that devices aren't secure as they need to be, right? So that might be true now, but for example, in 2 weeks' time or a month's time, it becomes dependent upon the device life cycle, the patching system, the patching regime that this device has, whether or not the security patches have been implemented, or whether or not security capabilities were there to begin with in that device, right? So we know that devices cannot protect themselves. So we do need something to protect those devices. But they also need to be protected from each other as well, right? So when a device can talk to anything else, so generally by default, at least everything on its own subnet, right? But there could be a basic level of segmentation that is already deployed, right? And generally have a fair idea of what the other device can reach. But the actual picture is that there are more often than they might know that these devices are getting accessed by some other devices, and that could be because of the scale, because in industrial environment you have thousands of devices, right? So you might know, okay, I have this subnet, I have these many devices, so they can only communicate with these. But then you plug in something which has two interfaces, okay, connecting to two different networks, and then you have kind of a device in the middle which is taking traffic from one and putting traffic to the other. So that scale problem could also become a challenge, right, with industrial environment. And one of the objectives that we will need to maintain is to be able to segment and being able to do that as close as possible to the device. So really, when what I'm arguing for here is, much more segmentation, but also segmenting that really only specifies this device can only talk to those particular ports. Okay, so we have to go into the granular level that I will not only segment, we will make it happen in such a way that we know that this A device talks to B device and they talk only in these three ports. So these three ports is which we will keep and then make this communication happen. We will not open up everything. Okay. And this device on these ports really getting down into, per device sort of a segmentation model is what is very important with OT. And in order to, proliferate segmentation, ideally, this is something that we want to be able to do in a software-defined manner. Automation again. And really the objective of doing in a software-defined manner is to do it faster, manage it more easily and at a scale. And ultimately, by doing this as close as possible to the device, we do restrict the lateral movement, and ultimately we can use the same construct, when it comes to response to containing the threat which might come later, right? So now we talk about issues that are seen with customer during our on-site visit, what we have found, and generic best practice guidelines. We'll also discuss about that, of how we can protect, critical infrastructure, right? So there are some generic challenges. First is what we've seen is lack of training and awareness. Okay. Secondly, there has been cases where PLC passwords, the program logic controller passwords have been written in whiteboards. And when we ask the customer, hey, what's that? They said, it's a PLC password, and we have just kept it for emergency because we might forget. And that, so you can well understand what level of, so you put your email password on a whiteboard for everybody to see. It's like that. Okay. Nobody cares, but that's not how things should be. Thirdly, it's a completely flat network, no segmentation at all. Fourthly, HMIs running legacy operating systems. What are HMIs, right? We'll quickly touch base on that now. HMIs are nothing but human machine interface. So whenever you program this program logic controllers, you need an industrial PC which gives you an interface through which you log in and configure these PLCs. So those are called HMIs, human machine interfaces, okay, in an industrial environment. Fifth, being not aware of what's there in your access list. Okay, you don't know what's there, so you can't secure. And sixth is direct connection from OT to IT without a firewall, where the impetus is that I need this data. If I can connect these two systems together, I'll get this data. And then most cases, these customers forget, and they'll just leave this insecure channel on, and your enterprise now connect back to your OT. Enterprise has IT, virus, malware, anything, everything that might infect your OT environment without a proper firewalling and segmenting, right? So these are the challenges that we obviously discussed earlier as well. That's what we have seen, right? And the next, the most important thing is bringing awareness of and having constant security training and security drills, right? This is one of the biggest things that could be done. So every quarter in Cisco or every 6 months in Cisco, we have a security training, okay, that we need to go through to, we all know the best practices of security, but we kind of ignore sometimes. So it is, in fact, very important to have these drills happening so that it's kind of ingrained in our mind, right? Then there should be proper redundancy planned with Security Operations Center. Redundant data centers should be planned with proper RPO and RFOs, right? Then you should adhere to standard defined for that specific country. So as I told you earlier, Malaysia, Indonesia, India, they all have their specific standards which we need to adhere to, right? Then there should be alternate process defined for mission critical applications and security systems, okay? That has also, it needs to be there, part of the process. So having proper collaboration in place. Okay, so now this is just continuing from where we left off in the earlier slide. So having proper collaboration in place with public authorities and government agencies, and as earlier mentioned, having a strong interlock between IT and OT is very important to have proper security measures in place, right? Then physical security is also very important with proper use of biometric scanners and other forms of physical security. Proper policy for user access management should be in place where user behaviors are monitored properly. Then there should be information gathering and sharing at a national, international level. For industrial specific issues, and in case of any zero-day attacks have been identified, that should be shared across industry, okay, as a best practice. Use of tools such as Cisco's, Cybervision, and that's what we are going to discuss next. And I think the question was also pertaining to Cisco Cybervision and its capabilities, right? So use of tools such as Cisco Cybervision can be used for passively identifying the deviation from network baseline and to help provide visibility and identify new attacks. And this point that will be a precursor for the upcoming discussion. So by the way, we are halfway now. Okay, any questions, please do let me know. Or if you want to take a maybe 2 minutes break, I'll just grab a little bit of water and come back. That's fine.
Yeah, I think we can have a 5-minute break, Sir
Sure.
Aridru, right?
Yeah,
You
sure,
want to
sure.
have
Yeah, I'll get a cup of coffee and drink some water. Yeah.
Right, so then we can continue at 11:45. Is it okay, Dr. Nurul Huda?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so let's have a break 5 minutes, then we can come back at 11:45, yeah?
Sure.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Meanwhile, if the audience have a questions, maybe you can type it in the chat box and I will read for you later. Yeah. Or maybe you can just turn on your microphone and ask the question straight away to our speaker. Thank you. Okay, maybe we can continue.
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi. Any questions so far?
So far, we don't have any question in the chat box, or maybe the audience can ask straight away to our speaker if you have any.
Or you want to ask it later once the session is over? That
Yeah.
also is welcome. No problem.
Yeah, I think maybe you continue first.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm not going too fast, right? Need to slow down my pace. You just let me know. Okay.
Yeah, I
It's
think
too
it's
technical,
good. Yeah.
and I'll try to keep it simple. But yeah, this is what it is. Okay, cool. So let's begin then. Uh, there are many different. So we'll just talk about what is OT, operation technology now. Okay. So there are many definitions of OT, but here, I picked one from Gartner, which I think is short and keeps most of the important components of the definition. So they say that OT is hardware and software. So both hardware and software that detects or causes change through monitoring or control of industrial equipment. So hardware and software, that means that there are some components running some piece of software which we will use. It's not exactly like a computer that we use in IT. And in some cases, yes, but in other cases, they are very specific components, but still running some piece of software. And what do? They just monitor and control the industrial equipment and assets and processes. So it's sensing what's happening in the real world, okay, like a sensor, and giving that information and then controlling the real world. Some of the the equipments in OT space would be valves, pumps, sensors, machines, robots, and so on, right? So, historically speaking about control systems, the reason why we have them in this industrial environment is to, get work done with less people. And so there are different reasons why we want to reduce the number of people. One obvious reason is because we don't have to pay them. So less people means obviously you are reducing your operational expenses, but and that's not only it. You want to prevent people from going to hazardous areas as well, right? Hazardous areas could be like nuclear or radioactive areas, right? You're going to limit their exposure, and thus you are improving their health and safety, which is also very important. Probably most, the most important thing, even compared to operational efficiency, right? And then there is a purpose of the control system is to provide feedback and then action to regulate the process. So we will see what it means and how that works in the industrial control loop. And we want to have devices to actuate things, right? To process stuff so that the so that's in a nutshell what an industrial automation system is, right? People, will always play a role in each and every step, though we are limiting the number of people, especially the manual labor that they need to do. But people will always play a role because they need to design the process, they need to make those things work, and they need to maintain the equipment, right? So there are many different industrial verticals that we touched upon, and they are completely different in terms of what they are producing and maybe how they operate and so on. But the good thing, no matter what is the process, modern control systems are almost always built with similar components. So they are relatively small variations or changes of different components that this organization use, okay, in a very large, complex system, right? So the next one, so now we discuss into the industrial, control loop, and you know uh, see what actual components are there, right? What are the similarities and differences? Okay, so the heart of the industrial control system is actually the controller, the program logic controller, which we touched upon. Okay, So we hear that asset name very often. So whenever we talk to any industrial environment person, he'll talk about PLCs. So they come in different sizes, shapes, and functionalities. But the essence that they are computer-based, devices generally. Okay, you can call it like an industrial PC kind of a thing. Okay, ruggedized PC. That controls real-time, mechanical process. So you will see that each of these PLCs have multiple input outputs. Okay, they could be digital input outputs connection. So you want to connect your sensors, actuators, and other things, and connect them to the PLC. Okay, through these input outputs. So there is a logic which is programmed on the controller, and then the logic is executed based on states. Okay. So PLC is the brain of the process, and very often it is deployed in a harsh environment, okay, on the plant floor, on the oil rigs, on the oil field, in a refinery, okay, outdoor environment, which is like touching 40 degrees. Okay, so they need to be resistant to physical stress. They need to be able to operate under extreme temperatures, both low or high. They're often, dust proof. They are resistant to vibration and so on. Okay, but in the essence, they are just computer-based devices that we program to do whatever we want these sensor actuators to perform. Okay. Okay, and a collection of this different process control system can be called as a distributed control system, the DCS that we are seeing now. Okay. And that's in the industrial control system, the functionality within a large site can be performed by DCS systems. But we are talking, geographically dispersed units. We are talking about one site with one different process. So it made with multiple process control system, and every process control system should have its own controller, which is nothing but the DCS system. And then we connect all these controllers to some kind of a centralized master. Okay. And this whole entire master server system with all these geographically distributed PLCs become a distributed control system. This is how it is, right? And general DCS control systems are used for huge, manufacturing, like maybe, for example, let me talk about Toyota, something like that. They will use a distributed control system. Okay. Now, the next important component is the HMI. So we all touched base on this, but we will anyways cover it. HMIs are nothing but human-machine interface. So that's the device that a person or an operator will use to interface with the controller. Okay, controller you cannot directly log in and do something on the PLCs or the DCS system. You need an interface, and this HMI is your interface to the controller. It can ideally be a embedded system, a self-sufficient kind of like a touch screen with some, like a tab with some compute power and embedded software, or it can be a regular PC as well, running some kind of a PLC software to communicate with the PLC. I'll come back to the question. Yeah, I've seen your question. I'll come back to the question. Yeah. So typically, they have a model diagram created by the integrators. So how this HMI works is they will create a model diagram of how the communication flow is, and then they will open up that on the HMI. Okay, and they can control the logics and the processes through there, right? And then we have the historians. Okay, historians are also another form of assets in the industrial process, right? And they are nothing but they store data, process data in the industrial control environment. They are very often, SQL databases, but not always the case. And they have, event logs and time series, data that can be traditional. They can actually be traditional GUI or a web-based interface, and you can access them via API as well, right? So, but basically they will store all important data about the process and in the field and store it for different purposes. So it can be stored for audit purposes, for business improvement purposes, and whatever reasons whatever reason someone in the business might have to see the data about the process in the historical sense, they can take out the data and read it. So what happens with the people in IT, right? The master database would be sitting in the HMI, which is in the OT environment. People in IT might want to access it, but they will only be slave in the sense that they will only access the data, only read only access, no editing permission. Okay, so IT people will, if they want to make a business call and want to check data, they can only read it but not make any changes. So they are kind of in a slave mode, right? That's how HMI works. Okay, let me come back to your question. What a problem often encountered IoT security? So what problems are often encountered in application of IoT system security? Okay, minimum optimal bandwidth speed used on IoT systems. Okay, so what problems are often encountered in application of IoT system security? So what problem in terms of you're asking about, when we actually put security controls in place, what are the challenges that we are facing? Or is my understanding correct? And minimum optimum bandwidth speed used on IoT systems. So there is no, so IoT, you cannot say what is an optimum bandwidth because every system is different. We cannot give you we can only give you a ballpark number. But in terms of numbers, if we talk about, if IT is using, say, for example, 1 GB of traffic, okay, for example, then OT will, or industrial equipments will use 50 to 100 MB at the max. Okay, so with and we will touch base on that as well. So with within OT space, to be honest, there is not much traffic in the environment. So even if you are using 100 MB link, that is called fast Ethernet, that is also should be covered in terms of taking all your bandwidth load for that matter. Okay, it is not as high or not comparable even to the IT space. So that is one thing, right? And what problems are often encountered in the application of IoT, OT security, or IoT system security? I think what you might be asking is what kind of challenges that we have been facing, right? So challenges are people are not willing to give information. It's typically the IT, OT siloed workforce, right? And whenever we have tried to ask questions of how we want to solve their problems, what breach has happened, so a lot of places where we have gone, right, to do a risk assessment. So when we do anything, we ask them, okay, tell me what are the devices that you have, how do you know as of now the devices are communicating, what are your current assets? Okay, and once they tell us, right, that is something very different from what we find when we deploy our cyber vision security tools. Okay, and that we will touch base upon, so don't worry about that. Yeah, so if you have any following questions, or I did not understand your question properly, if you can kindly rephrase, Dr. Mohammed, that would be great. Yeah, appreciate that. Appreciate your question. Yeah, thank you. I'll move on. And so now let's see what's the difference between IT and OT at a high level. The difference could be as follows, right? OT traffic is deterministic. Okay, so we know, as I was telling you, okay, it's 50 MB, 50 MB. It doesn't go beyond that. It's very deterministic. We know this device communicates to this device, and we know how much traffic it could be. Where IT traffic is not, you start downloading, songs and other stuff, softwares from the internet. Can go more than 1 GB as well, right? So in the OT network, the process is the most important thing. But in IT, we know the most important thing is data, right? In OT environment, in OT network, the throughput of a network is not important, as I told, right? as compared to IT, where achieving high throughput is very important in IT network. OT network patching seldom happens, but in IT, more or less that. But in IT, more or less, we have a definite, patching schedule, maybe monthly or quarterly, right? So there's a very nice article a former Ciscoite wrote, a very nice blog post called "IT is from Venus and OT is from Mars." So you might actually be a precursor to a story or a book that you might have heard of, right? So he just wanted to emphasize the difference between the two worlds, and it is correct. There are many differences, and here I just picked some of them. Like in IT, we have general skills and competencies available to support, while in OT, we have very specific engineering roles, right? In IT, computing power storage is expandable. So we just buy more and more servers, we expand the network or hard drive and whatever. But in OT, computing power and available memory and storage is often very constrained. And in field devices, so and these are placed in remote locations, could be placed in remote locations as well. So just go there and upgrade the PLC, get more memory, get more compute, right? That however, that doesn't work that way, right, with OT environment. However, the trend or the new field devices, PLCs and HMIs, they are becoming more and more powerful and more capable. But there's a difference to keep in mind, and that's why our security systems in IT and OT have to be very different. Like, for example, in IT environment, right, we can do a ping or a TCP scan of our laptop without any fear or damage to a laptop, right? However, if you do a TCP port scan on a PLC, okay, which is 10 years old, you can accidentally do a denial of service attack, okay, on the PC, on the PLC, and that might cause a reboot of the PLC, okay, because you just exhausted their resource by, because whenever you scan sending TCP messages, it has to, respond back to those TCP with an acknowledgement, right? So the memory is so limited on these PLCs, you exhaust the PLC and it becomes a denial of service attack for them, and it reboots, right? Because it was out of memory power. So that is one of the concerns with OT environment as well. In IT, high throughput is very important, okay? But occasional delays are okay. With high throughput in IT, we are okay to have occasional delays, okay? Mail might go 2 minutes late, no problem, okay? In OT, real-time delay are not acceptable, okay? Say, for example, okay, let's take example of a robot, right? Robot hand. They are called Fanuc robots, okay? You are making a car, okay, and there is a delay. So instead of the steering where it needs to get fit, it gets fitted on the seat because the conveyor belt where the car chassis and body is getting carried, it went off, and that there was a delay in the hands operation. Okay, so you can well imagine how much loss might happen. So delay is not no-go with, actually delay is no-go with OT environment and industrial environment. Delay with IT is still okay. Okay, so that is something that we need to keep in mind. And risk in IT is mostly about loss of business or confidentiality. And so while in OT, typically safety instrumented systems, risk can exceed losses to the business. So it can become a loss of life or damage to the environment or injury to a person, because we are not talking about computers, we are talking about heavy machinery potentially, right? As I told you earlier as well. So use of standard protocols in IT is quite standard now, right? Because initially it was different, but now it's all TCP, IP, and Ethernet, right? So many of these protocols have mature security features now. But in OT, these specific protocols that we talk about, that's rarely the case. We hardly see any encrypted form of protocols in the OT environment. Okay, there are many standard open protocols, but there are a lot many proprietary protocols used by specific vendors. Okay, and this is not something that we generally see. The trend is we do not see the trend of having a single protocol. It's still very dispersed environment, dispersed ecological system in the OT space. Okay, but now we do see that some of the industrial vendors, they're trying to add a layer of security on top of their protocols by doing authentication and by doing involving cryptographical code in their protocols, right, to secure it. Okay, and IT, then we go to IT, as we discussed, has a short life cycle, 3 to 5 years. You go buy a router, probably you will replace in next 5 years. But in OT, as stated many times, long life cycle is something. The idea is, if something is not broken, don't fix or upgrade it. Okay, let it run. And that approach was fine, but now with digital transformation, now with connecting things, hyper connectivity through industrial, Internet of Things and so on, we start connecting, different legacy equipments to our network, and doing that actually exposes the equipment to potential attackers, and that is where it becomes very important to change your mindset of, if it is not broken, don't fix it, because if it is kind of broken, right? If it's insecure, it's kind of broken, and you can just expose it to the internet because of this insecurity, and somebody might come from the internet, some backdoor, and might create havoc in your industry environment, right? And cause a lot of harm. And lastly, support options. Okay, easily available in IT versus in OT. Support options are also provided by suppliers or integrators of these PLC boxes, right? So in this slide, we talk about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When we talk about IT, these are the three pillars that we consider. In IT, confidentiality is the highest priority, followed by integrity, and then followed by availability. While in OT, availability or uptime is the highest priority. You have to have your systems running no matter what. Okay, that's the highest priority, and then followed by integrity, and then followed by confidentiality. It doesn't mean that only availability is important, but it is probably the highest importance. And let me give you a quick example, okay, to explain why we claim in IT. Let's look at an example of an email, so to speak, right? If someone can get access to your email for 2 hours, it is much worse, than if you don't have access to your email for 2 hours, right? So if you do not have access to your mailbox, it is annoying, I understand. But for 2 hours later on, everything is fine. Okay. But if someone can access your mailbox for 2 hours, you know what will happen, right? And if that person has a bad intention, you lose your confidentiality. It can be disastrous, right? All your confidential data can be exposed and so on. Okay, I'll just come back to the question. In OT, it is the important way around if someone can read the data from a turbine. Okay. In OT, so other way would be, if somebody is, reading data from my turbine, how many rotations per minute and stuff. Though there is a loss of confidentiality, it's probably not a big deal for me as an operator, right? Because for me as an operator, my system is running and I'm happy with that. Because what will happen is, if there's a system stop, huge losses, right? So if someone stops my turbine for 2 hours and stops my safety systems or stops my drill or conveyor belt, then potentially I am losing, I could lose lives, I could lose millions and millions of dollars as well. So you get my point. So availability is extremely important in the OT space. Right, let me come back to the question. On the main source of threats, so do you think industry must be? Yeah, so it's a fair enough question. So internet is the main source, but that's not the only source, by the way. So we cannot stop connectivity from happening from the internet. So internet is not direct internet. Internet is actually your enterprise site. Okay. So you have a office site also, right? When we talk about the industries that or the plants that are there is an office site as well, where all the business, all the CIOs, CEOs, and on top management sits, right? So that office is your internet in this case, because that's your enterprise network. And as I told you, the impetus is to get data. The impetus is to do well in business, to grow more. So if you want to grow more, do well in business, you have to have connectivity to know what's happening at the ground level. So the impetus is to have connectivity more. That is more important for customers now. So they want to move to digitization. They want to take a call to see what's happening on a day-to-day basis. They want to control what's getting produced, how are they getting produced, and how much are things getting produced, right? So that is one of the things that that drives connectivity between the IT and the OT space, and that cannot be stopped because it's a world of digitization. You want to do that. You want to control your fridge from your phone at your office. You want to control your car's AC from your office or your home. So those comfort, those luxuries are there, and that will drive connectivity, that will drive IoT forward. But there is security that has to be built on top of it. That is what has to happen. Improvement means higher cost but much secure. What's the cost comparison between IT and OT space? There cannot be a direct cost comparison between IT and OT, because IT has its own set of devices, OT has its own set of devices, and I told you with OT space, it's all different ecosystems and different, I believe you're talking about cost in terms of money, not cost in terms of potential loss of business or something like that. But in terms of money, it's very difficult to put a number. We can always put a ballpark figure, but with OT, the cost of products and services are a bit high because it's simple, right? We have very limited players in OT environment, but with IT, we have so many different companies. You will not be able to count it on your fingers. There are so many billion-dollar companies, but in OT space, top 7, top 10, there are very big organizations who are billion-dollar organizations like Schneider, Siemens, Rockwell, Yokogawa, Hitachi, so 5, 6 big players, right? So that is where there cannot be cost comparison, but in OT space the cost is higher because there are less players and it's proprietary based, right? Yeah, we can, but the only problem with those are, we cannot actually put too many dynamic things with OT, right? I told you, like with traditional networks, legacy stuff, it becomes very difficult, right? So that's why it's a bit of a problem to use these modern techniques. But we will look at it, okay, in a passive way. This is where cyber vision comes into picture, and we will discuss that. Okay, don't worry about that. So 38 we are in. Okay, so we'll move to the next slide. Now we will see what are some of the challenges that our customers have been facing in the industrial environment, right? As the equipment is still legacy in most of the industrial environment, these industrial systems are exposed to new threats. Okay? As proper security measures are not maintained, there have been a lot of attacks in the industrial control systems in the recent past, right? We'll discuss those in the upcoming slides. And there's a lack of or no visibility towards the OT assets at present. In few places, still the traditional method of pen and paper, okay, to keep a note of the inventory are getting used, or in an Excel, okay. As discussed earlier, there isn't any patching or maintenance system timelines maintained in the OT environment, okay. the approach is always on in the OT. Okay, so they do not want to, put a patch, power cycle the device and install the patch. That's not their priority. Their priority is to run, and make more and more production. That's the idea, right? So next, we talk about customers have some objectives. The objectives are to reduce risks. That is the first thing. When we go to the industrial environment, they do a safety induction. Okay, they will do so whenever you go visit a plant, they will start doing a safety induction. Okay, they will make you watch. Sometimes they might make you watch 2 days of video and then you have to pass an exam, or they might want to make you watch a 2-hour video and then do a short training, right? So they explain the procedure in that, right? They explain the procedure, where you need to evacuate in case of a fire, or what is the personal protective equipment that you have to wear and that you must have. And so there's a big emphasis on the safety, and that whole idea is about reducing risk in terms of health and safety, also in terms of business risk. So then they have employee productivity, and it's their other objective as well, right? Of course, they are trying to make sure that the employees are productive as possible. So then there also comes asset utilization and overall equipment efficiency also as one of the goals that they have. Then they have compliance and regulatory goals that we discussed earlier as well, and they want innovation. They want to differentiate. So if I have 5 car manufacturers, they want to innovate. They want to differentiate themselves against the competition. How are they going to do that, right? So some of these challenges that they are facing, while they have these objectives, that is IT versus OT and aging infrastructure, aging workforce, OT workforce. So again, OT workforce is, by the way, aging. Not a lot of people are going into, you guys, a lot of you guys are very young, so nobody plans, okay, I will be a OT engineer, I will be a system integrator. Very few people have their aspirations now. So the workforce is generally who are working in this OT space are generally the aging people, okay? And the people who are there, they have been operating for many years, so they are not open to that digitization change. That also needs the mindset change, right? So then the other important thing for us is the security concerns. Security is a major showstopper for industrial IoT, as we have discussed. But again, it is a major showstopper, but we'll still need to connect, because we have to connect, because that's convenient for us. Data accessibility and control system, and many of their assets are working in silos. So when we are trying to make sure that the data accessibility is everywhere, they are connecting things. But once again, when you start connecting things, you again have a security concern, right? So when again the same proverb, like chicken came first or the egg came first, right? So when you connect, you bring security concerns. Okay, the security concerns, not many things can happen, but you still connect. And then the lack of standardization, this is something then that we faced in IT environment many moons ago, but now mostly, as I told you, it's all standardized, use TCP, IP, Ethernet, but in only OT environment, no standardization. Different vendors, different protocols, own protocols. If you have to run my equipment, you have to run my protocol. That's the challenge that we have been facing in the OT space. Okay. Now, skill shortage, we just touched upon those. Don't get a lot of people with good understanding of industrial environment and OT process, but at the same time, be aware of good cybersecurity knowledge. So when securing industrial networking, this is one of the big challenges, right? Another challenge, which is another challenge which has gone hand in hand with this is the growing amount of threats. Okay, so attackers are actually getting more and more capable, because there are, as I told you, there are tools readily available on the internet. You just install Kali Linux, right? And you download it, don't need to download anything. There are inbuilt tools that can perform hacks in this old legacy infrastructure of industrial environment, right? So compliance is also one of the challenges because we already spoke about it. Governments are, different regulators are making, different terms of compliance, so the customer needs to comply. As a manufacturing unit, as an industry, as a as a utility space like TNB, we have to go with what government says. It's a mandate, right? So that's the main thing. And agility, so we already discussed, right? So not touch base those. Sorry. So we did touch base upon that, right? What are the factors we consider designing secure network space for industry? So firstly, we need to have segmentation. And firstly, it's visibility, right? We have to know what's there. Only what's there we can start segmenting, okay? Once we know that, we start segmenting, then we have to first visibility, then segmentation. Then what we need to do is we need to have policies, proper policies in place, and then those policies have to be implemented. Okay, so these are the four factors that when we design or try to design any form of industrial network, because industrial network is not greenfield. You can understand that. Most of these companies are there for a long time, so it's all brownfield. It's already there. So visibility, segmentation, proper policing, and then proper measurement of control is four things that we generally will try to do in this industrial environment. Yeah? Hope that answers. Yeah. In a nutshell, yes, that is correct. Yeah. Thank you. So so these are the we were discussing of what happened, right? Real life examples of OT attacks, right? So if you Google OT cybersecurity attacks, you're sure to find a lot of attacks that have happened in the last 10 years, right? So here we generally will discuss about two attacks that have happened. One is Stuxnet and the other one is Black Energy, right? So Stuxnet happened in an Iranian nuclear power plant called Natanz, right? And it happened in mid-June 2010, so 11 years back. So you can well imagine, right? And actually, it was discovered by accident because it had a flaw in its program, in the malware itself, by the way. So it spread beyond its initial target, but still within the plant, by the way. So, but then one of the operators in the plant recognized something bad has happened and something was going on. So he went to an ICS security mailing list and asked, "Hey guys, I'm seeing this values, which is not expected." And then the attackers, the actual attackers, you know how powerful they are. The actual attackers saw that email, okay, saw that post, okay, and immediately saw the question. They knew that their malware was found. So what they did, they orchestrated a distributed denial of service attack to these email servers or these, blog post servers, and two of these leading mailing lists, these were actually down for many days because they did this denial of service attack. So the guy who posted the question never got to see an answer back because they have taken the server out. The attackers were that powerful, okay, in terms of their contacts, in terms of their resources, okay. So so obviously that increased the time for them to get a resolution, right? So, and by the way, this was all state-sponsored attack, right? State-sponsored means there was countries behind that attack. Okay, you can read more on the internet. I will. Okay, that would be better, I guess. But this was done by two countries, which orchestrated this attack on Iranian power plant. Okay, so you can understand the amount of resource and power that one might have, right, to orchestrate these kind of attacks. The next one was, Black Energy. It was very famous and first attack on power grids in Ukraine. It was first discovered, in 2007, and then it evolved in a new attack in 2010 as a Black Energy 2. And in 2014, there was another evolution to this attack that was Black Energy 3. And it was typically, attacking the power grid and the power management system, right? The outcome of this attack, was 30 substations had to be switched off, around 230,000 people were, without any power for 1 to 6 hours. Okay, technical details are there. I will not bore you with that, but yeah, you can read more on that. It's quite interesting how these attacks have happened, right? Now, the question that lots of you guys have been asking, how do we protect it? There's so much problem, right? How can we control and protect this? And this is where, cyber vision has come. So just to give you a brief understanding of what cyber vision has been doing is, Cisco, being a leader in IT security for many years or even decade, we have a wide range of different security solutions. Okay. And integration. So our security portfolio is very strong. But with Cisco, we made the decision to, extend our offer into the OT space. Okay, because we are doing OT industrial, IoT devices portfolios we already had, like switches, routers. So we wanted to expand our portfolio into the industrial space. So in June 2019, Cisco announced the intent to acquire a company called Cybervision, which was formerly known as Centrio, which was based out of Lyon in France. Okay, and we rebranded Centrio with a new name of Cisco Cybervision. Okay, so majorly we classify Cybervision to do 3 functionalities. One is to provide the visibility part, then the operational insight, and then lastly this is threat detection, right? And we'll discuss all these points, by the way, in our upcoming slides. So no worries. So the journey to secure industrial environment is kind of 4-step process. Okay. So the asset visibility is the foundation of any security, because if you don't know what you need to protect, you will not know what you have to protect, right? And Cybervision is solving that problem. The next step is that the journey of network segmentation. So you have separate OT, IT, industrial, DMZ that we discussed. Okay, so segmenting network IT with OT with a IDMZ in between, sandwich in between, that is something that is very important. And doing this segmentation, this is kind of a proactive thing in the ICS customer that they can do, right? And the next thing is to get the capability to do real-time threat detection. So customers need to, quickly as possible to, detect and understand, okay, a threat has happened. Okay. So that is, threat detection is very important. And then finally, the last piece of the puzzle is a reactive kind of a services provided by the SOC. Okay. SOC is nothing but the Security Operations Center. Okay. Whether it's an integrated IT, OT single SOC, or if there is a separate IT SOC or OT SOC. SOC is nothing but it's really like a NOC, right? Network Operations Center, Security Operations Center, right? So it depends on the nature of the customer, but generally speaking, there needs to be some kind of reactive service to counteract the threat that has happened. Okay, that is very important. So about cyber vision, right? So it's kind of a 2-tier, monitoring architecture. So what it does, so what we mean by 2-tier is there is a centralized component called cyber vision. Okay, it has centralized analytics and data visualization. Basically, you as the user log into cyber vision, and then there you can go to the dashboard. You can do all forms of reporting. Whether you like to see cyber vision, okay, this is mostly the home page is the place of your interest mostly, right? And also with Cyber Vision Center is used for integration between different Cisco products. So with some third-party solution there, that's the role of the center. Okay, so what you can do is you can integrate Cybervision with other portfolios as well. Okay, for example, you can have ICE integrated with Cybervision. You can have Stealth Watch. These are nothing but Cisco soft, security products, which we will not delve in because that's a different conversation. Okay, so those things can be done, and then you have partner integration, like we can see on the right hand side, right? So SIEM is nothing but the security and event management center, right? So you can get those logs into SIEM, and SIEM will do kind of run analytics on top of it, and get you meaningful data, right? So those are the things that can be done. So yeah, this question. Let me just check. Okay. So how does DMZ differ? So DMZ and IDMZ are same. Okay, it's just DMZ is why they have been given a different name is because you are DMZ is generally used in the enterprise segment, and IDMZ for ID and OT segmentation. So the idea is quite clear, right? You are segregating your with firewall on the perimeter level, at least on your enterprise side. What happens? You have 3 zones, right? External, your internal LAN zone, and your DMZ zone, right? There your servers are kept. Here, everything here with IDMZ, everything is kept separate or segregated. Okay, so that is what you can do is you can totally segregate all your network or your components in IDMZ in a manner where it's totally segregated with your enterprise. So the idea is segregating that enterprise. So idea is that you have whole of your OT system segregated from your enterprise system, but the functionality is the same. The role and the placement is different. There's no other difference actually. I hope that answers. So yeah, so let's move on to the next slide. So digging deeper into this, we have what comes is Cybervision comes in 2 shapes. One is a hardware appliance which you can run on a any kind of a blade server, okay, with ESXi running on top of it, and then there is a hardware device as well, okay, where you can deploy it as an appliance, okay. And there are 2 different main types of sensors. So you have 2 different types of sensors generally available. Okay, one is the industrial, called IC3000. Okay, this is nothing but an industrial PC, okay, compute where we can run sensors, and we will discuss what are sensors, okay. And you can install Cybersecurity sensor on, as I told you, on the IC3K as an application. So IC3K is nothing but a server, as I told you, and it runs a form of a Docker container. So you can run your sensor application there on top of Docker container, right? And then so there is also in the industrial environment, we have these other things as well, right? So for example, the other devices, IE3400, IE3400, IR, Catalyst 9000, these are, so IE3000, all these IEs that you are seeing, these are nothing but industrial Ethernet switches. Okay, IR is industrial router. So IR, what is IR? What is the difference between IE and IR? Whenever we start with I in Cisco, it is nothing but industrial grade. Okay, so you have IP67 certified, and you have dust protection, you have waterproofing, you have high temperature and low temperature protection. So these are the equipments which we can run our sensor application in. And why we need to run on these boxes? Because these boxes will be placed in plant environment with harsh conditions, right? So we need these IE devices actually to run these sensors on, right? So deep packet inspection running on IOX, as I told you, and these IOX that is there, IOX is nothing but a container-based services which again talk northbound to the Cyber Center, right? So if we take a look at the ideal picture on how we imagine that one industrial network should look, right? They should ideally have the whole ICS network built using Cisco's I switches. Every switch should be able to run the sensor and then get full visibility across the whole network. So you don't need to pull additional cables anywhere. You don't need to have additional hardware for the sensors as well. And at the same time, you'll get all the benefits of having cyber vision security solution in your OT environment. So the main thing is easy deployment, total low cost of ownership, and additional hardware sensors are not required, so there's no impact in the performance as well, right? Let me quickly skip through this because I think we are. How much time do we have? Do we have half an hour more?
Our first this one it will end on 12:30, but maybe you can
Okay.
have another maybe 10 minutes.
Okay, fine then. Yeah, then we will quickly skim through this actually. Okay. So what this is showing is so now another approach is what we have seen with our competitors is we have they have so the sensors are nothing but tapping points in the network. Okay, so the sensors are just tapping the network, getting all the information and putting it onto the Cyber Vision Center for us to see. Now, why this information is needed? We have to understand that, right? As I told you, we cannot do scanning on the network, right? We cannot do, okay, please scan this and get the information and try to do things that way. That works in IT. With OT legacy equipments, we do a scan, we crash the device, right? So what we do is we connect these PLCs or these HMIs, okay, into the Cisco's I switches, okay. I switches are nothing but sensors. So they sense what all is going on. So they are doing a packet capture, okay, of the communication between these sensors, the HMIs, these PLCs and everything, right? And they will only send out a metadata northbound because it's a tied architecture, right? Northbound, they are going to send it up to the Cyber Vision Center. Cyber Vision Center will show us the analytics part, okay, of how the communication flow is happening. Now, how does that help? You have to understand that, right? We told that, hey, we don't have visibility, we don't know what's there. But if we do a packet capture end to end, we know what's talking to what and who is talking to who and with what protocol, with what port number by these tapping points, right? Then we know everything of the network. We just need to have all the information. We just need to visualize that, and that's what Cyber Vision does. And where Cisco takes advantage of it is there are other competitors doing this solution, okay, where they are also giving that same functionality mostly, but they come with an additional cost. They are putting their sensors, which is nothing but a hardware box, and tapping to the switch, okay. Switch, industrial switch, could be Siemens switch, could be Cisco switch, could be any switch. But with Cisco, the sensor is inbuilt in the switch. So if you replace your switch with Cisco switch, you just get that functionality built in, right? You don't require to purchase new additional hardware for the sensor. Okay, that is what we are bringing into the table for the customers, right? The Cisco. And with additional hardwares, it becomes expensive. You need to run span protocol. Okay, span is nothing but you are duplicating all your traffic and sending it to the sensor. Okay, so that is extra overhead as well for the entire OT network, because whenever you're duplicating packets and sending to the sensor, that is more process CPU on the sensor itself and plus on the switch. So there is more traffic than it needs to be, right? So what does the traffic bring in? It brings it could bring in jitter. So what our other competitors are doing is they are bringing in a separate span device, which brings in a lot of jitter, a lot of problems in terms of latency. There could be another high traffic volume that can be seen, right? So that those are things that can be observed. But what is cyber vision, what these sensor equipments are doing, they are only sending, they are not having any additional spanning or something that is getting done. They're just taking that metadata. Okay, metadata is just very small parcels and sample data from that entire data set, and little bit, only 5%, 3 to 5% is getting sent to the cyber vision center to do the analytics part, right? So this is again, just showing the architecture of how other solutions are working compared to us. They are all spanning. If you see, they are all spanning to the sensor, and then sensor gets connected to the solution. But for us, okay, if we have to, we can put the sensors on the. It could be a mixed approach where we put the sensors on the IE 3400 devices, and if there is non-Cisco switch, we just put the sensor for that device. So it's kind of a hybrid approach, but there is a lot of cost saving as well with this approach, right? So ultimately, it boils down to low cost of ownership, correct? So ICS visibility, we just will talk about it helps us gain access to the the control system, because we know what's talking to what and how it is getting communicated and what port number. So that building that visibility now becomes very easy with cyber vision. Okay. Okay, so speaking further about the visibility, you cannot secure what you don't know, and we have been stressing to this point, right? We have already discussed, the main things what you get with cyber vision. So what cyber vision does is it lists out all the assets that it's trying to defend. It will identify vulnerability in the network and identify what patches are required to patch those vulnerabilities. So it has intelligence. It has a knowledge database where it can when it talks to when some components talk to each other, it will understand, okay, this is the component that is talking, and this is the operating system that the component is using, and this is the patch that has gone in place. It will know that, okay, this patch only controls till these vulnerabilities. We need to patch these devices. So those kind of details, okay, cyber vision can take out for you and tell, okay, this thing needs to be patched with these patches now, because they are open to vulnerability, this many vulnerabilities. So we have to patch these. So those things, those details can also be fetched. Okay. Then the next thing, it will create a map, okay, a network diagram of all the traffic flows, okay, of what's communicating with what. We will see that as well. Cyber vision can also help identify if there is a leak in the IDMC. Okay, what cyber vision does is it creates a baseline of known good communication. So somebody was asking, how do we protect? Okay, so what we do with cyber vision is we install cyber vision, we run it for 2 weeks, okay, 2 to 3 weeks or a month to baseline. Baseline is nothing but it is a form of communication which is all good. We know that, we analyze it, we talk to OT people, we talk to IT people in that organization, we baseline it, we know, okay, these are the communication, they all look good, so we are good to go with this. Now, whenever there is an attack, okay, attack means obviously you will see some form of anomaly where this device is talking to the other device, and that was not the case earlier. So whenever there's a deviation, cyber vision is intelligent enough to pop an alert on your screen saying that, hey, this device is talking to this device. That was not the case. At that point in time as an operator, hey, this is not something that we are supposed to see, what is happening, and then you start investigating. Though you don't fix up the problem in an automated way, but you are intimated as soon as attack or something anomaly like things happen in your network, in your OT environment, right? So that is where the Cybervision brings in all the capabilities, right? And then you can build compliance report as we had discussed earlier. Okay. So now this is the screenshot from Cybervision. Okay, this is how it looks. So every component. So this is a drill down view. Okay, so every component you see the IP address, the MAC address, the vendor, the role of the device, when it comes, when it's first seen on the network, when it is last seen on the network. So on, right, so on and so forth. So if you double click of any of these assets, you get much more detail. Okay. So if you look at these, right, not only they are giving the IP address, they are giving which protocol it is running. So these are tags. Okay, we'll talk about the tags later, but these are the tags. These are the last heard, the IP address, and the activity, right? That has happened. Another important thing that we have as a unique thing is the concept of tags, which is just pointed you out. Every asset will be assigned a bunch of different tags automatically by Cybervision. Okay, this is nothing to do with manual effort. So you Cybervision understand the communication flow and starts tagging. Okay, this guy is this guy is this guy communicates on this protocol, so we start tagging. Okay, so there are two types of tags. Tag 1 is the component tag, and tag 2 is the activity tag. Okay, component tag can be like vendor specific tag. Okay, like Siemens, Schneider, Yokogawa. So those are the components, and especially like PLC or what is the role, right? That tag, correct? And there's the role of the device. So it can also, as I said, HMI or PLC, that those tags can be assigned. Then there can be activity tags, right? What activity happened? There was a firmware upgrade. There was a command that was pushed. That was there was this communication flow. This protocol started working. So those kind of tags or activity tags can happen. Okay, so there are component tags, as I said, and there are also activity tags. If a device, say for example, reloads, it gets a tag, host reboot, something like that, right? So if you want to see which device was rebooted, you can just put a time frame, just select on top the time frame, then select the tag host reboot, and you get all the information. For example, what all devices have been rebooted in the last 2 hours. So that amount of visibility you can get, right, in your network. And before, what you were doing, you might have been maintaining all your assets in an Excel sheet. So that kind of granularity can be achieved through Cybervision, right? This is the communication map that we have discussed earlier, right? So this is just showing what device is communicating to what device. Okay, this is not a, by the way, this is not a topology diagram. This is just a communication map to understand. Okay, this device communicates to this device. Okay, and that is that is the level of details that we can have and a map fake, right? So you'll see for each device what the device communicated with, and then you can dig deeper by clicking on those links, right? Those orange red links that we have, just click on that. We go into much more granular details, right, of what information was exchanged, which protocol was used, and what port number was also used. So that level of detail can be achieved, right? The next would be, as mentioned in the previous slide, we can dig deeper into the communication, and you can see the variables that have been exchanged by using a program logic or something like that. Okay, and Cybervision gives us operational insights as well. Okay, much needed operational insights of what communicated with what and on what port and what protocol, those details, right? Okay, so we'll discuss on operational insight now, and now we so as a control level logic. So what, say for example, this is nothing but a PLC that we are showing here. Okay, so what control logic is pushed to, as we discussed, right? We push control logic to these sensors. Okay, so what control logic is pushed, that also can be captured from the PLC. Okay, and this is the level of operational insight that you can get, and it's a raw real-time operational insight, as it will show you as soon as it happens. Okay, so what control logic is pushed, what it did, those level of details can be achieved, right? So now we talk briefly about threat detection. Okay, so there are two types of threat detection capability, like SNOT rules, okay, that is the IPS based rules, and anomaly detection. So this is a dashboard from Cybervision. So it helps you to easily track all the threats to the industrial environment. Okay, and on the bottom right hand side there is like a list of events, right? That has led to certain outcomes. So if you click on there, it will show you step-by-step events, which device login, what what command was run, what that command did. So that level of chronological details would be put forward, right, for an operator. So that will give you a rich context to all the events that have happened, right? So that is where for example, a security event has happened, like a port scan. Okay, port scan is definitely a security event. It will show, okay, which device initiated the port scan, what ports were used for the scan, okay, which device responded to that scan. So that level of details can be captured through Cybervision. Okay, so those are the level of details that previously these industrial customers could not achieve. Right, so these are the major things that Cybervision achieves. I think I'm done. Okay, I think we ended on time. Now, I hope this presentation has been informative enough for you. Just please let's open up for questions, if any. I'm happy to.
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Arju. So there is questions in the chat box. What are the threat landscape that usually attacks the industry?
Yeah, it's threat landscape. A lot of places actually. If you see the Stuxnet, right? How Stuxnet happened actually. So there was one employee in Iran who was actually, he was kind of a double agent. He put a pen drive on the systems in the OT environment. Okay, so there, that initiated the whole chain of attack. It was a malware, right? So that was one of the attack surfaces. Then there was another, as we know, with black energy, right? So there was other attack surfaces in terms of, the internet, where, you connected all your OT systems directly to the internet, not knowing what happened, how it was connected, and what was done, right? So those were the things that generally causes those attacks, and people generally do not know what actually how they actually encounter those attacks. So those are generally the things that previously, in my experience, has actually caused issues in the network. Does this answer your question?
Yeah, I hope so. Because there is a question from the audience. I just type it here. All right. This is the last question.
Yeah.
According to the Kaspersky, most of the breach among the industry will come from Middle East and Asia region. In your opinion, why this is happen? Is it because they are coming from the developed countries, or is there any other reason?
Yeah. So Asia, you can say, but like I can tell you one thing, right? If you see the major attacks that have happened in Middle East or in Ukraine area, right? So you have to understand the political background as well. I don't want to take names of countries, but Middle East has had enmities with Western countries, right? And Stuxnet, I told you, right? It was a state-sponsored attack. So if people suspect, okay, I have not seen physical evidence, or I've read somewhere, might not be true, but take it with a pinch of salt, that US and Israel were behind those attacks. What happened in Iran? For Russia, might have attacked because Russia Ukraine had a political issue. It's still going on, by the way, and that is something that might have caused those attacks to happen. So those are the things that could cause, and these attacks, industrial attacks, which are in the limelight, are quite sophisticated attacks. So you need a lot of manpower, money, resource. Okay, so if it's not state sponsored, okay, it might not create a level of loss that that an individual attacker like us might do, right? So that's the thing. So there is a political agenda behind mostly of these attacks.
Is there any question from the floor? Is there any questions?
Hello.
Yeah,
Excuse
yeah,
me. I got a
yeah,
question actually.
yeah, please.
NFT is based on a blockchain technology, and I read the news about hackers stole NFTs from a nifty gateway platform, and some of the users NFT projects worth about 300 million got stolen. Is it possible to recover the NFTs, and is it the blockchain technology actually safe for the users?
No, blockchain. Yeah, I got that question before as well. So blockchain, for IoT, industrial IoT security, which is very the equipments are very legacy, right? That is, we cannot actually involve very dynamic things there. That is the problem. With industrial, we have to. So why we are pushing cybervision is just sitting in between and listening. It is opening its ears and listening. A lot of these. So when you talk about IT security, right? Lot of places we are doing scans. Scans can be two types: active or passive. Active scans is what we do in IT. We will just query with WMI queries. We will run on Windows machine or other machines, and then we will know what they are running, what is vulnerable. But with OT security, right, we don't do that because we are afraid of doing it, because of the equipment or legacy. Whenever we are doing active scan, I told you, right, we can do denial of service attack. So blockchain is kind of, should be, as of now, worded. It's all. But cybervision, what we are doing, I can tell you that is we are doing AI/ML, okay, because we have our backend, we have our threat intelligence, we have our threat intelligence database. We put it in cybervision. Cybervision, what it does is it just hears what the communication is happening between devices, does an analytics runs analytics on top of it, puts it in dashboard, then it matches, okay, it analyzes what's the best practice, what's the vulnerability report, what's the database that it should match against. It does that and shows us what is right or wrong. But with IoT as a solution, IoT, not industrial IoT. Here we are talking about industrial IoT. IoT as a solution, yes, I have seen blockchain getting used, okay, but industrial IoT I have not seen. Okay, hope that answers.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Hi, sir.
For the last question, yes.
Yep.
Sir.
Yes, please.
Hi. All right. Which one do you think that is more challenging to manage the technology? We can see that lots of technology, right, for the to protect IT and also for the business operations. And which one is more challenging to manage the technology itself, or to manage the people who need to manage the technology, and also the user who sometimes the one who open the door, the hole to these attackers. So based on your experience, you can give some opinion about that.
Yeah, true. I agree to what you're saying totally. This is not a single thing. The answer is not do this or do that. Your question has the answer in it. You have to do all the things together. You have to. That's why with advent of technology, you have to adapt. You have to upgrade your technology. That is one part of the puzzle. But if your people are not trained enough, You cannot. So if you have holes in your pocket, however important and costly things you put in, it will always go down, right? So you first and foremost is training your people. Having process is also comes later point. Trained security training for people. It is not that they have to be security experts, but they have to follow procedures. They have to follow policies. That is something that they have to adhere to. And that after people, then there is process, policies, and then lastly, your technology equipment comes into the place. But if you do not have process, people, process, and policies in place, then nothing, no technology in the world can actually, as of now, say that you're 100% secure. That will not work if that's not covered. So people, process, and policies have to be. And first is training people. As I told you, we get security training every quarter. We have to pass exam for security in Cisco. So that is something that we always push people to, and that training should be done by people in the company so that they train people for the process that they have. Yeah. Thank you. I'm done actually. So any other questions?
Totally agree. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
If any students would like to ask some questions before
Me.
and
I
the
will ask
session.
question.
Yeah, Arif. Is it Arif?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I have a question to ask. So,
Yeah, sure.
along with your experience, do you have deal with the customer who have no idea about the security was or no idea about or having a little knowledge about the security implementation? Do you have deal with that customer? And if you have deal with it, how do you overcome that problem? Or how you overcome the situation? How you solve that problem? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good question. So I'll tell you one thing that it's not, I have never come across a person who has no security knowledge, but yeah, limited. I won't say knowledge was not a concern, but the concern was that, ignorance. Security is important, but it's not that important. That kind of customers we have faced. As I told you, right? We went to one of the customers here in India. So the customer had the PLC password written on the board, okay, on his whiteboard. We asked, hey, what is this? It's a password and there's something written, right? So we asked, hey, what's this? That individual said, that gentleman said that, hey, this is our PLC password. PLC password, you kept it here. So that gentleman said, yeah, we sometimes forget, and in emergency, we need to actually have those handy, right? So that is where we have seen that ignorance, that people might not steal. And that's where, what we as Cisco suggest is train your people to understand why security is important. That is where, we have to, as a company, as any organization, we have to drive, through people's mind that why security is important. So that is only through training and rigorous training. Every quarter or every 6 months, you have to have a training for processes for security, the do's and the don'ts. Right? I hope that answers. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We have a question in the chat box from Jana Sari. What are the common or the frequent cybersecurity issues that usually happen? And what are the ways that we're supposed to do in order to avoid it? If you don't mind, maybe you can share with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. So, common cybersecurity issues, I will only talk about industrial cybersecurity issues here, also specific to industrial cybersecurity. It's the common cybersecurity issues that happens is, it's strange, but it's true, is stealing of intellectual capital. Okay. So we know that Coca-Cola tastes like this, right? But we don't know what, we know they give cola, they give some formula. Okay. But we don't know exactly in which ratio, which combination they have been given. With the industrial cybersecurity attacks, what we have seen is the idea is to either sabotage, like the Iran nuclear power plant attack, that Iran is getting into nuclear business, we don't want it to succeed, we will sabotage that. That's one thing. The second thing is stealing intellectual capital. If I can steal Coca-Cola's recipe or KFC's recipe, then I can make it. It will taste like that. So if I can steal that combination, okay, by stealing and hooking into your network, that is where what we have seen is the idea behind most of the attacks. Yeah, I hope that answers. Yeah. And avoiding, as I told you, right, it's again a 4-step process: visibility and segmentation, and then there you have to have a process outline, proper process outline, and then there has to be a remedy for that. These are 4-step processes, and obviously we discuss cybervision helps you in at least 3 of the processes, right? Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
I think it's already 1 o'clock here.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
1 o'clock.
And everyone is, I think, is already.
Yeah, fine. No, I'm good. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. And
You give lots of information, so we also learn new things today. Yeah, I can say that.
Thanks for inviting me. It's really quite appreciate that, and thanks to Rayu ma'am, for not forgetting me and inviting me for this. I'll appreciate that fact. And if you need any form of information, if you can just pass on my email ID to the students, I will be really glad to get in touch with them and help them in any way. So
Yeah, sure.
you can give my email ID to them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
So, thank you for giving us a great presentation, and thank you
Thank you
for
so much.
answering all the questions. So
Yeah,
it
no
was a
worries.
very pleasure to have you with us today. So this concludes this webinar. All right.
Thank
So
you.
thank you
Thank you.
for all of you for attending, and we
Yeah.
hope that you have learned and enjoyed this presentation. So see you next time, and bye bye. So now back
Thank
to
you.
you, Mr. MC.
Thank you. I will drop off then. Thank you so much for inviting me. You have a good
Thank
rest
you.
of the weekend. Take care.
Thank you,
Stay
Mr.
safe.
Aurito.
Thank you very much,
And then also thank
Thank
you,
you. Bye bye.
Dr.
Mr.
Nurullah,
Gas. Bye.
our moderator.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you
Okay,
very
last
much.
but not least, thank you to all guests and students for your time in attending the webinar today. And hopefully this seminar will benefit to all of us in the future. I hope you have a great day. Before you leave the session, we'd like to get your cooperation to fill up the attendance form via the URL link that Dr. Noshima shared in the chat room. Thank you. Have a nice day, everyone, and thank you. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You. Thank you.